そこにあったのはルシアスと呼ばれる冒険者と仲間たちが残した旅の記録だった。
Pokemon Horizons is back, baby, with episode number 24. All right, my friends, here's the thing. So, as I'm watching this episode, right? I'm watching the episode, and here's one thing that I realized, and I'm like, I need you to bear with me here. I'm going to go kind of all over the place because there's a lot of points I want to hit, and I want to make sure I don't miss, okay? So I'm going to be kind of all over the place. But here's the one thing that really stood out to me is if you're a Pokemon fan, you've probably recently played Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, probably over the past year, right? Maybe you played Teal Mask recently. Maybe you're looking forward to the rest of the DLC. Maybe you played the game at the beginning of the year. Maybe you played it at a friend's house, family members. Maybe you have no interest in the games at all. You just enjoy the anime, whatever your flavor is, okay? But here's one of the things I realized if you do play the game is 𝐒𝐿𝐴 has the coolest storyline ever. And when I think about it, right, is imagine in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet or the most recent Pokemon game, if at the beginning of the story, your grandma visited and before you went to go to school in Paldea, right, and before you went to go and enter Naranja Academy or, you know, Orange Academy or Grape Academy, right? Before you entered the academy, you know, grandma visited your house and she gave you a pendant. And the pendant didn't show as a item on the screen, you know, because like a lot of times when you get like a Poke Flute or you get like a specific item, it'll pop up on screen and it'll say like, oh, this is a mat. But imagine she just gave you a pendant and it's just like a cool accessory that you wear. And then the game never references it again. And then somewhere down the line, either in the DLC, at the end of the game, you know, before you do the fight, you know, at the end of the game or in the DLC, right? Because the DLC is right here. We got the Blueberry Academy, you have Teal Mask, you know, like, right? You know, at the end of the game or the DLC, finally, that's how Terapagos becomes to be, is just like it is here in the anime. That would have been such a freaking cool thing to live through in the game if they utilized that. And like they gave you something, but then they never, like, it didn't show up as an item. And then it was never referenced again in the whole game. You just thought it was just a cool accessory you wore as your character in the game. I think that would have been just like so freaking cool. Regardless, you know, episode number 24, it's back. And, you know, one of the things I'm watching the show and we find out in the show that 𝐒𝐿𝐴's grandma is 𝐒𝐿𝐴's grandma's a badass. Okay. So that's the first thing is like 𝐒𝐿𝐴's grandma is grade A awesome. But we find out that when she was a little girl, similar to 𝐒𝐿𝐴's age, you know, she looked just like 𝐒𝐿𝐴, completely like 𝐒𝐿𝐴, right? So we know that 𝐒𝐿𝐴's gonna look like, so 𝐒𝐿𝐴's gonna look like mom's gonna look like grandma's, like their lineage is passed down it's pretty hardcore. So when she was a little girl, she found out that she has some kind of lineage to Lucius, right? Because she found the Lucius memoirs and the pendant inside of her attic and like some old things. So Lucius, seemingly, you have to assume that grandma's probably in her 60s, maybe a little bit older, you know, I'm gonna say somewhere in her 60s. So you have to assume that Lucius and his adventures occurred at least a century ago, maybe a little bit less, but let's call it about 100 years ago. Maybe a little less, but that suitcase that she got her stuff out of looked pretty ancient already. So I'm going to say Lucius's adventures were probably about 100 years ago before he went missing or he found paradise, as they call it, you know. And she has some kind of familial ties to Lucius, which means in turn, 𝐒𝐿𝐴 has some familial ties to Lucius or this grand Pokemon trainer adventure, which is so cool. But anyways, her grandma comes out and her grandma finds the pendant and the memoirs, and that's what set grandma up to start going on these really dope ass Pokemon adventures and essentially really molded her into the person that she is today. Like, that's so cool. And to me, at least, that's so cool. Like when you think about storytelling and stuff, like this is good. Like whoever wrote this story, like this is good storytelling here. So, Grandma goes, and this will set her out on her adventure, and eventually she gets to a point, in her old age, more recently, in the last couple of years, she gets to a point of renown that, the organization that 𝐒𝐚𝐧𝐽𝐻 is a part of, and his boss or whatever, seeks out her because they've started to investigate some of the stuff that's going on too, and they find her as a pillar or cornerstone of this stuff that's going on. So she then in turn hired the Volticers and gave the pendant to 𝐒𝐿𝐻 for safekeeping and stuff. And she had no idea that 𝐜𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐻 was part of the pendant, and his evolutionary line obviously is the one that's in the memoir. So either 𝐜𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐻 regressed somehow, so 𝐜𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐻 in his current form is the Pokemon Lucius had, or something else is at play there, because it's very weird for Pokemon to de-evolve. I don't think I've ever heard of that before. It's like once a Pokemon becomes Charizard, it can't just turn into, Charmeleon or Charmander again, right? So that's the one. It's like, I don't know if it's necessarily the Pokemon he traveled with, but maybe it could have been its offspring, or he could have found the legendary, you know what I mean? Maybe it's a time Pokemon. We're going to learn more in the DLC for Pokemon as well, too, because 𝐜𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐻 is a part of that. But we don't really know, but that Pokemon is independent, and she was like, oh my gosh. So now we're going to learn more about Lucius and more about that, but this episode was so plentiful and so meaty of information. And then we see that, Grandma is cool inside of inside of her castle, and, she's surrounded by a bunch of Pokemon. She has an Arcanini. I know it's Arcanine, but I call it Arcanini. She has an Arcanini and a Billy Bird, or, Billy Bolly, whatever the hell the stupid-ass bird's name. I don't like that bird. But she has that bird and a bunch of different Pokemon in her castle and stuff. And I just think it's so cool. And I also think it's cool how Sprigatito didn't really take to Grandma first either. First off, Sprigatito didn't want to go. And then when Sprigatito went, he was like, I don't know how I feel about Grandma. He's like, meow. All sassy. I'm like, all right, cool. So anyways, this episode was awesome. I really love all the context and the world building and the character building, and the storyline's really, really good. The last thought I'll leave you off on is the episode ended with 𝐜𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐻, kind of trying to communicate to 𝐒𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐴, which again tells me that we can feel, or at least I feel personally, that 𝐒𝐴𝐴𝐴 isn't a bad character inherently. I think that he thinks that what he's doing is right. And a lot of times, when characters are written in stories and even in real life, somebody who thinks what they're doing is right doesn't realize what they're doing is wronging others, And that might be like, if I were to give you a shit example, that might be like me as a parent doing something for my son or my daughter and going full tilt. And what I'm doing in my head for them, whatever it is, just insert thing here, I'm doing with all my passion, all my heart, all my brain to make something happen or not happen, right? And I'm giving it full, it has my full attention. It has my full, I think that what I'm doing is right and righteous for them. But what I'm doing for them may be wronging others, right? But in my head, in my heart of hearts, I'm doing the right thing. And a lot of times in life, that's kind of how you have to be. It's like, you're not going to be able to please everybody, and you need to follow your instinct and do what you think is right. But sometimes what you think is right might be wrong. You know what I mean? So that's where I feel about this character, 𝐒𝐴𝐴𝐴, being complexually written. Is I really think that he's complex to the way of I think he thinks he's doing what's right, but inherently he's doing wrong. You know what I mean? So anyways, I'm gonna leave you guys on those thoughts there, but this episode, freaking fantastic. Really loved it. I'm happy it's back, and Pokemon Horizons has just been such a pleasure. 24 episodes in, right? We're basically 2 seasons worth of anime, traditional anime in. It's awesome. So anyways, let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments below, my friends. We'll see you next week. Peace out.